Well, he started off strong. Welcome back. Welcome back. You man, Diamond K in here, of course. The DiamondKShow.com, on firetelevision.com. President Joe Biden had his first State of the Union address, and we're going to talk about it. He started off pretty strong. Only a little, just like I said, about a week ago, President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address was focused largely inward, focused largely on America, looking at our economic, our public health woes, fighting COVID-19. That was going to be the focus. Inflation. That was going to be the focus. But the start of tonight's State of the Union was Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And this war has changed the focus of Biden's State of the Union speech. Of course, your man Diamond K in here on firetelevision.com. I'm going to talk about this speech. I'm going to talk about the Republican response. We are going to get into it all. Start off with current events, world events, foreign policy, democracy versus autocracy. No longer just an abstraction. The speech and the war in Ukraine gave President Biden both the opportunity and the urgent reason to talk about this fight between democracy and autocrats. Biden has repeatedly talked about the battle for the souls of America. He's frequently talked about the battle between liberal democracies and autocrats like Vladimir Putin. He's often said that it's one of the greatest foreign policy tests facing the world. And it's true. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the surprising unity of America and its European allies has given the president a chance to speak about something that he's often talked about in a way that the global audience can appreciate. He said that in the battle between democracy and autocracy, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. The president said that this is a real test. It's going to take time, he said. Let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. Of course, talking about Russia invading Ukraine and those folks that have been fighting for their country. Ukraine has been all over the news. Just a couple weeks ago, most folks could not point out Ukraine on a map. Now that's all folks are talking about. The president celebrated the West coming together for these hard-hitting sanctions that are, according to the president, choking off Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength, weaken its military for years to come. Oh, yeah, he was talking tough. I liked the energy at the start of this speech. I did. I mean it, the president said. Closing American airspace to Russian flights following Canada following some places in Europe, trade suspended. Yeah, that's what he said. Europe, Asia, and African continents, free world will hold him accountable. Talking about Putin. Oh, yeah. Now, we knew that this was going to be a major part of his speech, these current events. Representative from Ukraine was in the building. She was emotional at times. It was very interesting to see. Biden has been caught in the middle of culture wars for much of his first year in office. With this State of the Union, the president, who had made his long career in politics living in the middle, had moments where he sought to pivot to the center. And Biden is most comfortable in the center. If you remember, he dismissed those on the left of his party who had advocated for reducing funding of the police in the midst of last year's national reckoning on policing in Black communities. So he dismissed that. We should all agree, he said, the answer is not to defund the police. The answer is to fund the police with resources and training that they need to protect our communities. That's what he said. He said that today. The beginning of the speech, of course, talked about Ukraine, but then things went, to some natural directions. The mention of the American Rescue Plan, the Build Back Better agenda got Republicans riled up. Oh, they started rustling. They started making noise. No surprise there. 60 million barrels of oil reserves to help blunt gas prices. Even as the president appealed to the higher ideals of democracy, freedom, Biden knows that many Americans would process the war through prices at the gas station instead of geopolitical risks. How much money is this going to cost me? That's what's going to be important to many Americans. Many Americans. So the contrast in priorities as Ukrainians beg the United States and its allies for weapons to protect itself, unlike some countries that you may think they will train or give them weapons, and then when it comes down to fighting, they're going to turn and run. The Ukrainians, oh no. Ukrainians are tough. They want to fight. They say, give me the gun. I'll fight. That's what they're saying. And they've been doing that. Russia is the second most powerful nation, the army in the world, next to America, according to some people. I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at Russia's economy, and I will use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers, President Biden said. So he announced the plan to release 30 million barrels of oil from the U.S. Petroleum Reserve. Gasoline prices are averaging about $3.61 a gallon. But most of that increase occurred over the past year, right? This didn't just happen. But it's a sign that Biden sees his own political fortunes resting on the family budget, resting on whether or not he can reduce inflation. And that is true. Now, that's going to be what he's judged on, even more than a land war in Europe. How much is he saving, or how much is he hurting? His policies hurting folks in their pocketbooks. Folks, I don't know. I was hoping that he stayed strong. He did not. Kind of fizzled out in the middle, kind of lost steam in the middle. Started talking about Build Back Better, making his case, trying to get folks to vote, folks in Congress to vote. Hey, vote for a bill. And he starts running down all of the latest and greatest, all the greatest hits of the American Rescue Plan. Infrastructure. I said mentioning of the infrastructure, Build Back Better, American Rescue Plan got the GOP in attendance riled up. Biden says that more jobs in 1 year than ever in American history. The most jobs. He attacked trickle-down economics, citing the failure of trickle-down economics, meaning that you give more to the folks at the top and it's just going to trickle down and everybody's going to get it. No, that did not work. That has not worked. So, talked about infrastructure. Not infrastructure week, he said. Infrastructure decade, to which the Democrats applauded and they were happy. Climate change. You talked about climate change a lot. Build Back Better was the centerpiece of this speech. He spent the most time on the Build Back Better rescue plan, the buzzwords. Intel CEO was one of Biden's guests. 20 billion to 100 billion, they said. He made the case for making things in America. That case needs to be made. Not rewarding those big companies who try to save money by hiring out-of-state workers to do their jobs. Right? Making things in America. I wish more time had been spent on that. But overall, he tried to make the case of why they need to pass this large agenda. And the Republicans always attack it as, more spending and not fiscal responsibility. They're not going to vote for it, Joe. He beat this over the head of the American people, the viewers. The GOP is not going to help you with your agenda. You've seen that already, right? It doesn't matter how nicely you ask. It doesn't matter if you say, my Republican friends. It doesn't matter if you say, hey, you know me. It doesn't matter when you say you've been there 40 years, however long it's been. They're not going to help you. The only way you're going to get your agenda past President Biden is by getting more Democrats elected to Congress. That's your best chance. This 50-50 it's not going to work because you got two people at least that are not going to vote for your agenda. Not all the time. You need more people. We don't believe you need more people. You had Diamond K in here on firetelevision.com, the diamondkshow.com. We're talking about President Biden's first State of the Union speech. Started off strong, fizzled down in the middle, ended strong. It was aspirational. He said a lot of things that we've heard before. We talked about the vets, talked about the price of prescription drugs. He talked about a lot. He spent too much time on his vision, his large vision. I more so think that this thing needed to be chopped up. No, he wants to give this big old thing. It's like the kid with their hand in the cookie jar. And they're grabbing as many cookies they can fit in their hand, and they're trying to pull their hand out, but they can't get their hand out the top of the cookie jar because they got too much cookies in their hand. But they don't want to let any of the cookies go because they want all the cookies. That's how he is about this American Rescue Plan, the Build Back Better plan. Too many priorities, and they don't want to let anything go. Talked about some of his wife's priorities, which is community college, right? I get it. She's a teacher currently, and that's something that's important to her. I get that. Yeah, happy wife, happy life. He had to mention that. That got her amped up when he mentioned that, right? Too much time on his vision. He wants to cap prescription drug prices. Okay. He wants to do the climate change policies, which are now being portrayed as lower energy costs for families. Financial support to limit child care costs, still in. Expanded child tax credit from the COVID-19 relief package is out. Universal pre-K remains a priority, but the primary goal of all of these policies is no longer to win the future, as Biden had once claimed. It's about reducing inflation, the problem dogging Biden's popularity in the here and now. This is why folks are mad at him. He tried to put COVID in the rearview mirror. There were no masks. I didn't see any masks in there. And he's trying to get folks back to work. He's trying to reset things with regards to COVID-19. Biden said that the country has moved beyond the pandemic, even if it still needs to remain vigilant against mutations. His big argument is that the country can't change its past divides, though it must address the pandemic with a united front. That is easy to say, hard to do. He said that most of the country can now be mask free. Most Americans are vaccinated, and more vaccines are available if needed. Schools are open and workers can return to offices, he said. COVID-19 need no longer control our lives. Echoing statements that he made in July, just when the disease similarly appeared to be in the rearview mirror. Then, boom, it was back with the vengeance. Is this Linus and Lucy with the football? I don't know. Now, the difference this time compared to the summer of 2020 is not only the increase in vaccinations, but the lessons from Omicron and Delta that cause infections and deaths to accelerate. So we have learned a lot. We have repetition, right? Repetition. There were various references to the word job tonight. Inflation, obviously, mentioned a lot. Pandemic, mentioned a lot. COVID-19, mentioned a lot. Repetition is important for politicians. So, members of Congress were wearing colors of Ukraine, showing solidarity. That's the blue, and yellow, right? As Russia's invasion of Ukraine grinds on, lawmakers are showing their support. Biden, in his speech, I thought that there should have been mention of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. No mention of that. There was not enough talk about the things that he's actually going to be able to really get done. Right? It should have been more of a focus on Judge Jackson and her Supreme Court nomination. That's something that's going to actually happen. She's been nominated. She's going to, that's something that we're actually going to see. Some of these other things, aspirational, right? I get it. Biden has vowed to check Russia. Biden has vowed to fight inflation. He gets those things done, he might be in good shape. You make Putin pay the price, that's fine. But you're also going to need to address inflation. You're going to need to do that. So the United States is following Canada and the European Union in banning Russian planes from its airspace in retaliation for this invasion of Ukraine. Right? That was leaked, and the president said it tonight. His, remarks highlighted the bravery of the Ukrainian defenders. The bravery. It is very important. Very important. Even before Russia's invasion sent energy costs through the roof, prices for American families had already been rising because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to hurt families and this country's economy. Let's not act like it's over. It ain't over. We have a choice, the president said. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I have a better plan to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. So we have that. We have that going on. The president has a balancing act. On one hand, he's got to try to balance this war in Europe. He's got to try to balance COVID-19. He's got to try to balance inflation. And he's got to try to battle these sagging approval ratings as we're heading into the midterms. According to so-called experts, Republicans are getting ready to make a big comeback in the midterms. And the president doesn't want this to happen. He's trying to fight it. He's trying to do everything that he can do to battle this, to not have what many are predicting to happen. He's trying to turn this thing around. So the State of the Union tonight, President's first, was it a hit? Was it a miss? Wasn't perfect. Anytime Joe Biden's talking longer than 15 minutes, I'm sure that folks get nervous on his team. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? Oh, my God. He didn't make it a complete disaster. Yeah, crescendos, I suppose. There were ups and downs. Started off strong, lost steam midway through, finished strong. It wasn't dark. If you didn't like Biden or you were on the fence about Biden, did this State of the Union change your mind? Probably not. The State of the Union, according to the president, is strong. This is our moment, he said. He finished strong. He started strong. He hit all of the points that I expected him to hit. I just think that he should have hit more points and even things out a little bit. Too much time spent on the American Rescue Plan. Too much time spent on Build Back Better. Not enough time was spent on the things that actually can be done to lower inflation. He did want Congress to approve some of his picks. He mentions that casually. But his focus has shifted. His focus has shifted. Foreign policy is a much bigger part of his mindset now, much bigger than it's ever been. When he's talking about democracy, when he's talking about our standing in the world, he's motivated and he's excited. He is amped up, and you can see it. You can see his eyes light up. But I don't know. I don't know. There were a lot of claims made by the president. A lot of claims made. So let's look at some of those claims. Biden says severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year, of course, referring to COVID-19. Now, Biden overstated the improvement. He omitted a statistic that remains a worrisome marker of the toll from COVID-19. Hospitalizations are indeed down from last summer, but deaths remain high. The CDC tracker shows 289 deaths on July 1st, 2021. This past Monday, the CDC tracker reported 1,985 deaths. Right? On the economy, President Biden said that Intel's plan for new factories in Central Ohio, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. Now, it's aspirational. That's premature. That many factories are not imminent and may or not even be built. Right? Earlier this year, Intel announced that it would open 2 factories expected to employ 3,000 people. The other 7,000 positions the project is slated to create are temporary construction jobs, right? The actual building of the factories, the folks who are going to do the building. Now, it is also planning a chip foundry business that makes chips designed by other firms. Now, construction is expected to start this year. Intel has raised the possibility of constructing up to 6 more factories over the next decade, which could bring the total number of factory workers up to 10,000. But that's only a prospect. And if it happens, we're talking about years from now. So Biden said that the pandemic also disrupted the global supply chain. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drag down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation, the president said. Lower your costs, not your wages. So he's talking about cars. He's talking about this. And, he says that, folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America. More infrastructure and innovation in America. More goods moving faster and cheaper in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Good words. I agree. We need to make it in America. It should have never been made somewhere else in the first place. But it is dubious to suggest that more domestic manufacturing means less inflation. Just because it's made here doesn't mean that that's going to solve all the problems alone. Now, manufactured products made overseas, particularly in China or Mexico, where wages are low, are generally cheaper than US made goods because it costs them less to make it, generally speaking. So Biden puts, I think, too much weight on the supply chain, too much weight on disruptions from overseas as the factor in the worst inflation in 4 decades. Now, COVID-19 played a major part in that. Major part. Talked about guns. Biden asked Congress to pass a measure that he said would reduce gun violence, right? Repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued, the only one. That is false. Now, gun manufacturers do have legal protections from being held liable for injuries caused by criminal misuse of their weapons, thanks to the 2005 Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. They are not exempt or immune from being sued. The law includes 6 exceptions where manufacturers or dealers can be held liable for damages their weapons cause. There's 6, including defects or damages in design of the gun, negligence, breach of contract or warranty regarding the purchase of a gun. Families of the victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting in Newtown sued the gun maker Remington, alleging wrongful marketing of firearms, and agreed to a $73 million settlement. So he was wrong, right? Infrastructure law. Biden on the infrastructure bill. The single biggest investment in the history was a bipartisan effort. No, it was not that historic. Biden's his infrastructure bill was big. It added $550 billion in fresh spending on roads, bridges, broadband, internet over 5 years, but measured as a proportion of the U.S. economy, it is slightly below 1.36 of the nation's GDP. All right. And that was spent on infrastructure on average during the first 4 years of the New Deal, right? According to the Brookings Institute, it is even further below roughly 2% spent on infrastructure in the late 70s and in the early 80s. I mean, if you want to be technical about it, right? The Republican response was done by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. He criticized Biden's handling of immigration and boasted about Republican governors' attention to the issue. We've actually gone to the border, and the VP and the president didn't go to the border, that kind of thing, right? This is actually not true. Kamala Harris visited the border last year. Biden has not gone. It continued like that. Governor Reynolds talked about defunding the police. Of course, Biden said he never wanted to defund the police, and he wants to fund the police. But that's what Republicans do: ignore the facts and stick to their talking points, such as life. All in all, I think that the president, on a scale of 1 to 5, I give his speech a 3.5. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, at The Diamond K Show, thediamondkshow.com, onfiretelevision.com. President Biden making his first attempt at the State of the Union and trying to turn things around for his administration. What did you think of his speech? What did you think of Joe Biden as he vows to check Russian aggression, vows to fight inflation? Did he make the case today. I say talk is good. Talk is cheap. Let me see what else you